I timed that perfectly. That was awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Geeks and Noobs podcast. I am your host, SuperBeard Hoover, joined as always. Why is my no sound? What's going on? Oh, I do have sound. Sweet. Okay, good. Do have sound. Thank God. That was weird. But able to time that perfectly, have a good intro. Screwed it up by getting panicked, but it's okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to TGN
Hey, Vince,
podcast.
I can't hear you, man.
You can't hear me? I've got sound here. You can't hear me on... I've got audio on Zoom. Double check to make sure I've got audio on the podcast. Yep. Okay, so Jason says he can hear us both on YouTube. For some reason, you can't hear me. That's weird. Did your headphones, like, give out or something?
Yeah, I can hear you on the podcast, but I can't hear you directly.
That's weird. Maybe... Huh. What caused that? Maybe jump out of Zoom real quick and jump back in.
I don't know. They're plugged straight into the mic.
Oh, that's weird. I don't know what your Zoom set be. So it's got to be in Zoom. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break while we figure this out. Oh, okay. He's jumping out. Let's see if he can jump back in. See if that makes a difference. I may not drop in as often, but this Twitch is awesome, by the way. Thank you, Shinso. I appreciate it. Some technical issues, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Thank you for the highlighted message as well. Appreciate that. All right, he's rejoining. Kel is back. Let's see if this works. Well, now I can't hear you, Kel. Can't hear you. Can you hear me? All right. Wait.
Okay, I can. Yeah, I
Can
can
you hear
hear
me?
you now.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Okay, got it. Don't know what that was, but we got it. Thank God. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Technical issues aside, we got it figured out. So cool. Cool. All right. So, third time's a charm. Welcome to the Geeks and Noobs podcast. I am your host, SuperBeard Hoover, joined as always by my co-host, Kel McCosplay. Shinso asks, is Kel an actor?
Well, not in the typical sense. I mean, I have done many stand-up plays when I was in a Renaissance reenactment troupe years and years ago for my local middle school. We had our own little Renaissance festival at the middle school that I went to, and then after I had graduated high school, we did our own little thing there, and we did lunch performances for the kids, kind of like when you go to medieval times and stuff like that. So, you know, I have dabbled in acting, but I'm not a professional by any means.
Actually, it's something you and my brother have in common. My brother used to do the Tampa's biggest Renaissance. He used to work that.
Nice.
Including the live action chess game. He was the sheriff. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I swear I've either seen him in a movie or a lookalike.
I get that a lot. When I was younger, a lot of people compare me to like a very young child like Tom Cruise. And then when Daredevil came out, a coworker said that I looked a lot like Charlie Cox. So, that's a in her memories, because she's unfortunately passed on now. I might try to do a Charlie Cox Matt Murdock cosplay in the future, and maybe later on do a Daredevil cosplay.
Right on. I used to get like in my mid-20s, I used to get John Cusack.
I could definitely see that. Holy moly! Yeah, now you say that, yes.
Yeah, I used to get John Cusack, which was interesting. But we are so off topic. But that's okay, because this is the fun part of doing a
Yeah,
live podcast is getting
exactly. Yeah.
and getting to rant on stuff like this. Shinso, thank you so much for your comments. I love
Thank you,
you.
brother.
Appreciate it. But yeah, so today we're talking about the final film of Phase 4 for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Already a massive, massive film in its first week. It's already made more money. It made more money in its opening weekend than Black Adam had made up to that point.
Yeah.
This is not about Marvel versus DC. Personally for me, Black Adam fell a little flat. But again, it's not about the competition or, one versus the other. In fact, I hope they both massively succeed. That's only great for us. If one of them drastically fails to the point of shutting down, that's bad for us as fans. So I want everybody to succeed, but I think that there was obviously Shinzo says it's just the heroes in general that I truly care about. Exactly. These characters are something that are very beloved, and to be able to see them in live action is great. Even if it doesn't hit fully, it was still really exciting to see. The Justice Society. I'm a huge Dr. Fate fan. My brother says he gets Mr. Bean a lot. I don't see that.
No, you look nothing like Rowan Atkinson.
No. But and what does that say about me? But yeah, the Black Panther film, obviously incredibly anticipated, slightly controversial just because people were very much like, how do we handle this after the great Chadwick Boseman passed away? Never really liked Shazam though. I always loved Shazam. I've always thought it was a great character, and his whole entire cast, including Black Adam, are good characters. I think part of it too was, growing up, he was a kid who got superpowers. It was like, oh my God, that could be me.
That could be me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but when it comes to Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, there was some controversy slightly surround, not like, and the word controversy sounds so negative and awful, but it was more of a, how are they going to handle this? How do you handle it? And there was differing opinions on how to handle it. There were people that literally had a petition out to recast him because the character was too important to let go. But I think
I was going to go there. It was like, I think it was only controversial for the people that wanted T'Challa to be recast.
Yeah, but the thing was, there was a great interview with Anthony Mackie, and he was asked about that. Yeah. He's like, who would take? He's like, if Marvel even decided to do that, which he goes, I think it's a bad idea if they do. He's like, who even tries to step into that role?
Yeah.
He's like, it's one thing to recast me. It's a whole other thing to recast Chadwick Boseman, who is arguably one of the greatest actors of all time. Mm-hmm. And I would have said that before he passed away. This is not like I know, like with, and not to disparage Heath Ledger in any way. I think Heath Ledger was also a fantastic actor. But after he passed, he suddenly went from being this, B plus actor to this suddenly like Oscar winning like legend. Yeah. When in reality, like the only thing anybody ever cared about was Brokeback Mountain, and everything else they looked at him and they're like, oh, he's the 10 Things I Hate About You guy, or this and that. He wasn't getting the love. Yeah. And those are all great films. He just wasn't like. But look at what Chadwick Boseman's catalog is. 42, Get On Up, which, by the way, Get On Up to me is one of the greatest biopics of all time. The James Brown story. It is such an impactful and powerful movie. 42 also incredible film. All the work he had done so much work and had done so well, and then what he did in bringing Black Panther to life. And I heard somebody else in their review of this film mention there's a point of, and this is we're not getting into spoilers yet, but this is kind of a minor spoiler. There is like a kind of tribute towards the end of the film to him, just showing clips of him throughout the MCU. You can just see the second he's on screen. There's no words. There's a musical score over these scenes, so you don't hear his dialect,
and it's very subtle. You can hardly hear it,
but you very much like instantly feel the magnetism and charisma he had with that character and how he brought it to life.
Yeah,
and to try and make somebody step into that role, it's setting them up for, and this is exactly what Anthony Mackie said, you're setting them up for failure.
Yeah.
Shinso says Black Panther Wakanda Forever was good. I cried. I don't care. I cried.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Multiple times in this film. Damn it, Zoom. You need to stop. Really? Zoom keeps updating, thinking they're improving their product, and they keep making it worse.
Yeah.
Oh, give it a second. Well, I'm sure you guys can still hear us, so that's fine. We're just gonna have dumb looks on our faces.
Oh yeah, I mean, I look like I'm high, and you look like you're taking a dump.
Yeah, I would have preferred the high. But taking a dump is natural, and everybody does it, even ladies, regardless of what they want to tell you. All right, hold on. Now I gotta do this stupid thing again. Switch to webcam real quick, and then I can switch back. Hope I clicked on the right one. Yeah, I hope I clicked on the right one. I need to try to rename these. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Did the audio cut out again?
Check 1 2. Check 1 2. I've got audio on Twitch. I think I'm completely frozen on Zoom here. Yeah, my Zoom is completely frozen. All right, just a second, everybody. Zoom is just being completely ridiculous.
Oh, technology is a wonderful thing. That's what we keep saying. Good grief.
All right.
All right. Let's see. Let me back out again. Holla, holla.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wish I had a hammer nearby, that way just when we come back from break, I'm just...
In all fairness, I timed it again perfectly with the goddamn theme song, so that was awesome. So that in and of itself, from the Be Right Back screen, that was great. Shinso also makes a couple more comments here. They could do like how Batman has Robin take over the mantle of Dark Knight, and if Shuri doesn't want it anymore. And before I don't want to get into spoilers just yet, but we are going to do. Let's break down the story first of what it is. And obviously, in this film, we're dealing with the tragic loss of Chadwick Boseman. They're dealing with the tragic loss of T'Challa. I'll wait until spoilers before I get. There's something I want to talk about. That there's some influencers that are complete fucking idiots, and we'll get into that. And the story kind of revolves around Shuri and the rest of Wakanda dealing with the tragedy of this loss. And in the meantime, it turns out that there's more vibranium in the world than originally thought, and it's affecting another kingdom, a kingdom that nobody knew about,
No.
uh, which I don't want to try to pronounce because I'm going to screw it up. It's Tulticon or
Telecon.
Helicon. Okay.
Telecon.
Helicon, which is home of Namor and his people, which in the comics he was Atlantean and he was from Atlantis, but they have changed it to this Mesoamerican Mayan culture. And if anybody has any idea about history, you know that the ancient Mayans like suddenly disappeared after the Spaniards came through.
Yeah.
In this, the explanation is that they didn't just disappear; they drank from their version of the heart-shaped herb, but it was a water aloe-like plant.
Yeah.
So it took different properties, and it gave them it gave them ability to live underwater. But I don't want to say like it took away their ability to live on the surface. It gave them gills and the ability to process oxygen through the water,
Mm-hmm.
basically turning them into, for lack of a better term, fish people.
Yeah, mer people.
Yeah, mer people. But Namor's mother was pregnant with him, and he became a mutant because of her drinking that stuff. Because he was still human, and developing, but developed these powers. We'll get into more of how that worked in the spoiler section. But regardless, he is trying to protect his kingdom from the surface world getting a hold of vibranium. He partially blames Wakanda for making it known. Because up until Wakanda, in Black Panther, where Wakanda finally, the first film, came out and became public, it was believed that all the vibranium was gone. That the last vibranium was literally in Captain America's shield. It was believed there was no more vibranium on Earth, but then Wakanda let it be known that they existed. They had this abundance of vibranium, and they would work with the rest of the world. That opened up the doors for people to try to hunt down more vibranium for their own nefarious purpose. Let's let's be real. Even though their government, we all know the government is nefarious anyways. Hot take. But that's what the film is. It's these two nations. Namor is wanting Wakanda to work with him to take over the surface world. In the meantime, Wakanda is still, and specifically the royal family, is very much suffering from all their losses, trying to work through things. There's also a very heavy, science versus religion kind of tone to certain things.
Yeah, somewhat.
Somewhat. And, so that's the conflict of the film. And that's all I can really say without spoiling anything. But let's get, general impressions of the movie before we get into it. And I want to say, I think Kel's going to agree with me here. This film is phenomenal.
Yes.
I had 2 minor issues with it, and they're minor.
Yeah, we're talking about it yesterday, and I mean it's just tiny, minute nitpicks that Vince was talking to me about. Which the first one he mentioned to me yesterday was I didn't notice because he has a background in filmmaking. I don't. I just watched the movie and just kind of scanned over through it, and I didn't notice. What was it? You said the tone was a little bit off.
There was some pacing issues with the film,
pacing issues.
And so you and I both wholeheartedly love Mr. Sunday Movies.
Yeah,
and the Weekly Planet podcast. And what I also appreciate about them is that even when I don't agree with their opinions, they're not assholes about it, and they give constructive reasoning behind the way they feel, layered with comedy. They do a very good job of keeping it funny, keeping it entertaining, but they give constructive reasoning behind it. They also solid pacing. They didn't they still can their rating system is either worst movie ever or best movie ever. There's no in between. And they did give us a best movie ever, but they also, one of the very first things they talked about was they both had an issue with the pacing. I felt like there was times when it slowed down maybe too much, and then it would suddenly ramp up, and then there was times when the ramp up was subtle. So like it just the roller coaster effect you should get with a film is still kind of a structured up and down, and this one felt more
Yeah.
jagged at times for me. So, and I also understand that it, and this is why I said it's a very minor issue for me because one, it didn't pull me out of the film. I just noticed a
No.
pacing issue, but I don't think any of us can even begin to comprehend how hard it was to make this film.
Yeah.
I fucking froze again. Okay, good.
There you go.
I don't think any of us realized because the script was done. They were already starting pre-production. Chadwick was very much involved as much as he could be. Nobody knew he was sick, but something seemed off. You listen to some recent interviews with Ryan Coogler, he talks about it.
Yeah.
But then to have to completely restructure the script in the middle of a pandemic and deal with the loss of this great friend from something that nobody knew anything about. Like, when I say that nobody knew, it was literally just immediate. I think it was his mother and his wife and maybe one or two other people. It was less than a handful of people that knew. And so, sorry. Wait. The fact that they had to then, and everybody in that film, everybody who worked on that film loved him dearly. And that the fact that none of them knew and they were just suddenly blindsided by this and everything, it was crazy. So I can't even begin to imagine how hard it was to make this film. And a lot of the elements that were in the film were in the original script, as far as Namor and the kind of overall plot of these of these two nations kind of trying to having the same goal but a very different way of getting there, I guess would be the way to put it. Because even in this, like, and by the way, Angela Bassett, holy shit, if she doesn't get nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress,
Yeah.
it's a crime against
riot.
humanity.
Yeah, I mean,
That,
she
my
was
God,
fantastic in this role.
so good.
As T'Challa's
So
mother.
good.
I'm 100% agree with you. She was just on her game, and she's always been a fantastic actress, but she brought it to another level, I believe.
Well, I think part of that is again, she was very close with Chadwick as well, and this movie meant so much to her. And also, I believe that even without his passing, like if he was still alive to make this film, they understood the importance of this movie to people of color and everything. They know what the first movie did for people and for the cultures, and then adding this the Latinx culture into it, it makes it doubly important. And so, sure, she would have gone out there and hit 100, hit 1,000 again. But my God, was she phenomenal in this film?
Mm-hmm.
And what I thought, another thing that's very interesting about this movie, we don't technically have a villain.
No.
We have an antagonist in Namor. Or Neymar, depending on who, which I also appreciated the fact that they didn't all say it in the Latin dialect. They, the Wakandans pronounced it how they would pronounce it, and et cetera, et cetera. And I also appreciate how, obviously, when this character was created in 1939, in no way was his name meant to be without love.
Yeah.
The boy without love, but the fact that they were able to do that and it made perfect sense was great as well. So,
yeah, and for me personally, I'm not a big Submariner fan. I know about him, but I wouldn't call myself a fan. I've never really read a book with him in it. But to me, the Submariner for the longest time, up to when we saw the movie yesterday, was always came across as the old man yelling at kids, "Get off my lawn!"
Yeah.
Meaning,
He um
don't trespass in Atlantis, and I won't destroy the world. That's the deal.
he very much in the comics. Like I've always been a big fan of his. And he started out pretty much purely as a hero. He teamed with Captain America and the original Human Torch, the android Human
Yeah.
Torch,
Mm-hmm.
and they were the original Defenders. And fighting in World War II and whatnot. There is a great late '80s, early '90s solo run of his where he initially loses his memory, gets amnesia, and comes back. I had that run, but he's been a Fantastic Four villain, going after Sue Storm, um, wanting her as his wife, stuff like that. Um, he is feuding with Wakanda, specifically Black Panther. That all
Mm-hmm.
that all is more recent in that comes off the Avengers versus X-Men storyline where the Phoenix Force got split into 5 people. He was one of them. He ended up flooding Wakanda. And obviously T'Challa has never forgiven him for that, even though he was kind of possessed. But he's always been kind of like, over the last several decades, he's been more of an anti-hero or villain at times, but he is a part of the Illuminati, um, because he is the king of Atlantis, and so he's a very fascinating character, and I really appreciate the way they handled him in this film because in this film, again, he's not the villain;
Yeah.
he's just the antagonist. He is really trying to do what Wakanda's doing, is protect their people,
Mm-hmm.
but he thinks he has to do it through force. And part
Yeah.
of that is how long he's been around. I'm not going to say any more until we get into spoilers here shortly. Um,
Yeah, that's another little thing I want to bring up about him before we get into spoilers. Was I was a little skeptical at first when I first heard they were going to change his ethnicity, but then I was quickly on board with it. I was like, you know what? I mean, he doesn't really have an origin. Well, not it's wrong words, but he didn't really have an ethnic background besides saying he was Atlantean, which was from Greece and all that. But I think this switch, after seeing the movie, and especially seeing the one scene that the reason why he wants to protect uh Telecon from the surface world makes total sense, and I think it was a brilliant move on
I
Marvel's
agree. Yeah,
decision.
I agree wholeheartedly. And also, like, even though Namor does predate Aquaman by a couple years, he is
Mhm.
first, and their origins are almost identical.
Yeah, they
Um,
really are.
and that was back then it was straight up copies, like
Yeah,
straight up copies.
and
But
it still happens today in modern comics.
but Aquaman was $1 billion film,
Mhm.
and anybody who hasn't read the comics or knows these characters would just instantly start to compare them. So, and not that Marvel was afraid, but I think that it was just smarter to be like, let's just avoid that. And in the meantime, we can also help elevate another culture
Yeah,
into this and help diversify even more. Um, and
it's
so I
almost
thought
like
that was a really
when.
smart. It was a really smart play, and plus the design of everybody, the
Oh
looks,
yes.
everything. I just absolutely love that. Like I've always been a fan of ancient Mayan culture. That sounds so bad, but like I've always been fascinated by the ancient and like the Aztecs and the Mayans and in ancient Egypt and
Ancient civilizations,
like
period.
ancient civilizations. Yeah, but like their art,
Yeah.
they're far more advanced than we ever give them credit for.
Hmm.
And the more we learn about them, it's like, oh, they were like, we always, of course, there's the Mayan calendar, which everybody thought the world was going to end in 2000 and then 2012 from this calendar, when in reality it was just a calendar that repeats. Like
Hmm.
that's why it had an ending, because it's a cycle like they had developed, but it's a cycle that works. And
Because it's a circle. It doesn't
yeah,
end. It doesn't begin. It's a circle.
love that
My
movie.
terrible.
Love that movie.
I'm glad you got the reference.
Yeah, Donald Harris. Anyways, so I
Are you kidding me? The audio went out again.
can't hear me again.
Gosh. Hang on.
All right. Sorry for all the technical issues today. It's Zoom. It's Zoom. Like I said, every time Zoom updates, it gets worse. So I apologize about that, but he'll be back. Hopefully, I don't have to. I can get him back in here. All right, his audio is connecting. He'll be with us shortly. Can you hear me now?
Here I am. Yes.
Okay.
Gosh.
Yeah, it's Zoom. It's Zoom. These updates they keep doing to make it better, make it worse. And
Zoom, you were
so,
a blister on my butthole tonight.
yeah, I kind of want to figure out that collab cam thing again, if we can get that going and kind of avoid
Are you
this.
serious? Jeez.
I want to try to get that going,
Ugh.
but even that's still in beta, so we keep having problems with that as well. But of course, his audio went out again. Fun times, gotta love it. But I'll just keep talking about what I was saying. With the introduction of this character, again, there was no villain. Namor was a antagonist. And thus the battles between Wakanda and Tulakan, the Tulakan people. But the reality was they kind of wanted the same thing. They just had different methods of wanting to do it.
Yeah.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. We'll figure this out eventually.
Yeah.
But
I might take it back what I said. Please don't drop me again.
yeah, I know. Like I was saying, I do want to I do want to figure out maybe the collab cam or some other way of doing this, just because this is getting to be a pain in the ass. But we'll figure it out one day. But yeah, so let's go ahead. We're 30 minutes in. We've had enough technical issues. Let's go ahead and get right into spoilers.
This is getting ridiculous.
Yeah. Did it do it again? It did it again? What the hell? Fun times. We're gonna get into spoilers here. Doing it to us. Hopefully, it won't be so bad on Tuesday. Yeah, we'll see. It's just crazy. I don't understand what updates they keep doing that it's causing all these issues. I get it. They're trying to make they're trying to make it better. They're trying to work on it. Trying to improve their product, but every time they do an update, it gets worse. So I'm wondering, instead of having your headphones connected to your microphone, could you connect them directly to your computer and try setting your audio through that?
Maybe. Let's see.
Because that's what part of the problem is that it's going through. But
That's weird. We didn't have that issue last week.
yeah, but it could be from the updates. Like I said, it just updated again.
Could be.
So
All right, let me just try that out.
you might have to change your settings now.
Test 1 2.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go with that
But-
for now.
Well, I couldn't hear you when I plugged it into the computer, so I plugged it back into the mic. So.
Plugged it back in. All right. Well, let's run with it. Let's see what happens.
All right.
Hope it doesn't work. Well,
Anyway.
now we're gonna go into spoilers now. All this, but so the film starts an incredibly emotional moment, and this is something that has created controversy currently on social media, and certain people are, trying to bash the film because of this. And so the film opens with you see Shuri kind of praying to Bass. She's like, "Look, I'll never doubt your existence again if you just help me cure my brother." He goes into the lab. Everybody's frantic. She's trying to cure him because T'Challa is dying from some unknown illness that he had kept secret from everybody. And there was thought that maybe another dose of the blue shape herb would help him. But since Killmonger had burned them all, she was having to try to synthetically recreate the herb in her lab, and she wasn't getting anywhere near the success.
Yeah,
Throughout
I
it
think they
all,
said only is like 9% success rate.
29% was at where she was at the final
29.
before.
Okay.
Yeah. So when she printed it, it was at 29%. And of course, it didn't work. She would only know it's valid if it glows. It didn't glow after she printed it. But she ends up, because she's so focused on trying to save him in this last minute with all the technology they have and everything they have going on, that she's not even by his side when he does pass. And of course, her mother, Queen Ramonda, Angela Bassett, walks in and lets him know that he's gone. And then there's a funeral scene. And again, incredibly emotional for the movie to start this way. Now, there are people, these influencers on TikTok, like, oh, this didn't sit right with me, how they exploited Chadwick's death for a fictional story, blah, blah, blah. It's like, wait a minute. One, Chadwick's family worked closely with Ryan Coogler to develop the script and find the best way to pay tribute to him. They wanted this in there. Who are you, somebody who never met the man, didn't know the man, had nothing to do with him? And I understand that his acting ability had an impact on a lot of people. He was a role model for a lot of people. I get that. I'm very much the same way with like Robin Williams and people like that. Like, they're very impactful in your life. And Robin Williams' death still affects me to this day, 6 years later. Chadwick's death is also one that still affects me. Like, it was a big deal. I remember writing the story. Like, when I found out, I didn't believe it. I thought it was one of those fake hoaxes on the internet. And I did all kinds of research to figure it out. And sure enough, it turned out to be true. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. But for you to sit there and bash this movie because you don't agree with it, because you think that Marvel was exploiting it, like, again, who are you?
Yeah.
You didn't know him. You weren't there. Marvel didn't exploit him. Ryan Coogler didn't exploit him because the family wanted this in there. So, again, shut up. Shut up.
Yeah. Nobody cares about your feelings, Karen.
And there are people like, oh, well, everybody's opinion is valid and how they agree from this is valid. I'm sorry, but it's not valid.
No.
For you to try and bash this film for how they handled that, when you don't know the facts, you didn't know the person. And the fact that the family helped write this part of the script and help put this in there because they wanted to, this is how they wanted to help people grieve and understand what they went through. Your opinion is not valid. I'm sorry. Not every opinion is valid. Not every way somebody grieves is valid.
Yeah. It's like I tell a lot of people, you're entitled to your wrong opinion. That's your choice.
Yeah. So it's just, I believe, like, in watching that, it was very emotional, very tear-drawing, but it also is like, it gave you just a sense of what his family went through in the final times. Because so many people in the family were blindsided. Because again, he kept it very, very close, very, very secretive. So, like, it was a very, like, you not only felt the loss, but you felt for everybody. You also felt for his real life family in that moment. And that's what's meant to come out of that. Not, oh, they're exploiting his death for a fictional story. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
It's just, and of course this influencer is somebody who literally ruined somebody else's life to push himself up. So fuck that guy.
Yeah.
And there are other influencers kind of like jumping on this. Like, even the ones that disagree with him are trying to be like, oh, well, let me play like good guy here and be like, oh, his feelings are valid. He just doesn't understand. No, fuck that.
Yeah.
Not everybody's feelings are valid. Not everybody's understanding is valid. Not everybody's opinion is valid. That is not how the world works.
No. You're either right or you're wrong.
And the fact that you're gonna bash this film out of your own entitled opinion as if you knew the person,
Mm-hmm.
get off your high horse. Get off your high horse.
Yeah, the scene made you uncomfortable, so you're gonna bash the movie. Okay.
Well, it's also like I said, there's an entitlement there where they think they knew the person. Like it's a parasocial relationship that doesn't actually exist, and they need to calm down. All in all, that opening scene was so insanely emotional.
Yeah. I mean, we all know that Marvel has no problems tugging on our heartstrings. With this scene, it literally pulled a Temple of Doom moment, ripped your heart out, and set it on fire. I mean, it
But
was just.
I also felt it was necessary because again,
I agree.
I've never
I
agreed with the recasting side of the argument.
Nope.
I don't think it should ever be recast. I think that they should just have the mantle move on to somebody else.
Yeah.
Which kind of happens in this movie, but it kind of doesn't, and I'll explain that statement later. We get towards the end.
Yeah.
The impact of this film, though, is just absolutely incredible. From that moment, it builds from there. There was actually a third thing that came to mind that I kind of like as I had spent more time to think about. There was something that I kind of had an issue with, and this is where pacing comes in. But we're not there yet, so I'll get to it. But there is another part that I kind of feel like maybe could have been dialed back a bit.
Yeah.
By the way, this film is 2 hours and 41 minutes long. And even though, like I said, I had some pacing issues, it didn't feel like it. I know some people have said it felt it, but I think it's because it was just this film is heavy.
It is.
Throughout.
I mean,
It is a lot to take in. It is very heavy emotionally. It is intense and somber, and there are very few jokes. It is arguably the most somber and intense Marvel movie we've ever gotten.
mm-hmm.
And that includes Infinity War and Endgame. Like, this, hands down, just, wow.
Yeah, I think the reason for that is because, with Infinity War and Endgame, that is a situation that we can't really process as humans. But as humans, we all deal with and cope with death of a loved one. So that's definitely why it makes it so surreal, and how you process the grief, which is ultimately the underlying plot for the movie, and how mainly Shuri deals with the death of her brother, because she doesn't really learn to cope and deal with it.
It's pretty. As much as there's the warring conflicts of the same side of the coin that we get from Talokan and Wakanda, the way it can be done over Discord. Oh, that's something we might want to do. Maybe we should start a Discord and try that. Maybe that'll avoid this Zoom bullshit. But Jason also says this is the greatest celebration of not only of an actor but of the character too. I agree.
Oh yeah,
I agree. It was a great
hands
way to
down.
handle it. But like I was saying, not only is there the warring sides of the same coin, this film is about the grieving process.
Yes.
And how some people handle it one way, others handle it another, and how Shuri, who is kind of the focal point of the movie, but it is about everybody. She is handling it, and being that she is this young protege princess, suddenly thrust into this position of losing, like going through everything they went through in Infinity War and Endgame, and even Black Panther with what Killmonger did, and then from that they move into Infinity War and Endgame, and then the kingdom finally starting to come back, but then losing their brother ever so suddenly, and then she'd already lost her father, and then losing her brother, and then of course later in the film, fortunately, Queen Ramonda also dies. But now she's dealing with the loss of everyone.
Yeah.
And she has a very poignant line at one point. Queen Ramonda
Oh my
pulls.
god, that line.
Yeah, so
Mm.
Queen Ramonda, and this is also the introduction of Namor in the film. Queen Ramonda pulls her out of her lab and takes her to a spot, and part of the mourning process, and this is a year after the funeral, or a year after the loss of T'Challa.
Yeah.
He has a bonfire out on the river, and he's burning her funeral garments. And Shuri refuses because she says that if I don't, she's upset that she couldn't save him. She's upset that he kept it a secret and that she didn't have time to save him. And she feels that if she allows the grief to overtake her and she burns those garments, she'll want to burn the world and everyone in it.
Yeah.
This is kind of a parallel to Killmonger's take in the first Black Panther film. He wanted to burn the world and everybody that was against Wakanda and their people and the estranged people of their culture. So she's dealing with this grief, and she's very angry. She doesn't believe in that this kind of confirmed to her that she didn't believe in the ancestral plane or the gods or anything like that.
Yeah, because she's a scientist at heart.
Yeah, and so she very much.
She's not religious in the same ways that T'Challa was, and her mother and her father. She's taking the side of technology over religion, which nothing wrong with that. But
also, like, even T'Challa, go back to Civil War. Even T'Challa, kind of, like, he was angry at the death of his father.
Oh yeah,
and
he was going through the same thing that Shuri's going to go through in this.
He said a line. My father has always said, told me that death is only the beginning. It's not, or death is not the end. And he'll live forever on the ancestral plane. He's like, but I am not my father, and I will get my revenge. And so there was not only parallels to Killmonger, her cousin, but parallels to her own brother in that grieving moment. But, like, we then see there's a Wakandan outpost attacked by a military group looking to get vibranium. In the meantime, we see, like, a UN panel where both America and France are calling for Wakanda to live up to their side of their agreement and start to share vibranium. And, man, again, Angela Bassett, an amazing, gives us a speech about losing people and how, like, we swore, we did promise to help people, and we've come out and helped people, but we're not going to give you vibranium. We're going to protect it because you guys are going to use it for nefarious military purposes. And then Dora Milaje knew that an attack was coming, were planted with their scientists on this outreach program, captured all of these soldiers, which turned out to be French soldiers, and they parade them in and make them kneel right in the middle of the UN. I'm like, that is such a powerful scene.
Oh yeah.
And the look on the French ambassador's face, like, shit, we got caught. It was very funny to me. I'm like, is Marvel really taking a stab at France right now? Like, what the fuck? Like, I was like, Marvel's like, fuck you, France. But we get also later on in the film, we find out, like, the president's calling for, like, basically an attack on Wakanda, like, to go after them and take the vibranium by force. And it's like, what the hell? Like, and that's the thing, that's just how this works. Like, it's just, that's just kind of how the world works. And that's what would happen if vibranium existed, that country came out, like, there would be military forces going after him.
Oh yeah, but, absolutely.
I forgot the term that was used. I forgot what it's called. But regardless, but speaking of the government, this is another thing, and I think it dealt with pacing. We had Everett Ross again, Martin Freeman's character, Shuri's favorite colonizer, as she put it.
Yeah.
But I felt that stuff was too long. We didn't need as many scenes there, because what we also got was the Contessa, Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character. We find out that Everett Ross and her used to be married. We also find out
that blew my mind.
Yeah, she's also the current director of the CIA. So this woman who's been making moves, and this is again a thread that connects the entire Phase 4. She recruited John Walker, recruited Yelena Belova, you know, all the other people she's going to have for the Thunderbolts. It's being done because she's actually the director of the CIA.
That was something I was wanting to ask you about because, being director of the CIA is usually a very public thing. People know that,
Mhm.
but why would John Walker not recognize her as director of the CIA unless she wasn't then, but she
Yeah.
is now.
I don't think she was at the very beginning. I think she was named afterwards.
Yeah.
And I think part of her move with John Walker was what helped her get into that position. I believe that she was already somebody kind of high ranking in the government, and she's been kind of like, because the character Contessa used to be like Nick Fury's right hand woman, turned double agent, Lady Hydra, this whole thing. So like, she's worked her way into that position. But I believe that this also means that the Thunderbolts will actually be a government kind of licensed group.
Yeah.
Which will be interesting.
Very.
But Everett, like I said, the Everett Ross stuff I think could have been cut way back, and that might have helped the pacing. I do like the character though of Everett Ross, and now because Contessa knows that he was feeding information to the Wakandans because she had him bugged and all that stuff. So she has him arrested, but the Wakandans do save him, so he will now be there. Like, he's probably going to live in Wakanda because it's the only place he's going to be safe. But I do like the character, and I love Martin Freeman. I think that stuff could have been cut down. But also in that scene I was talking about with the burn the world and everything, it's also when we get our first view of Namor. And we see the winged feet, which I'm so glad they didn't get away from that. I'm so glad they did that.
Yeah.
And he's got the pointed ears and everything, but again, he's very Mesoamerican look to him. But he basically lays it out, and it was very Namor-esque from the comics.
Mm-hmm.
You're either with me or against me, and I have as many soldiers as you have blades of grass, so we will wipe you out.
Yeah.
We find out later, because there's also like Riri Williams because the scientist who built the vibranium detector that's kicking this whole thing off turns out to be the 19-year-old MIT student, Riri Williams. And she did it basically because a professor told her she couldn't do it.
Yeah. So she's very Tony Stark-esque.
Yeah, this is Ironheart. And, we see her Mark I suit as well as a Mark II suit. Her Mark I is one she built in her own garage.
I really love the fact that her Mark I suit is very similar to like those jetpacks that they're making now with the thrusters on the arms.
Yeah.
It's
very exoskeleton versus a full suit.
Yeah, it's just like that. I mean, I was looking at some photos from it earlier today, and you can see where the harness that she has on has like the jet straps on it to keep them.
Yeah, like parachute straps and
straps on in between the legs and the chest and the torso, and then it also has like zip ties attached to it. So it's very janky, but very effective too. But it looks
built
just
from
like,
scraps. Built from scraps.
But it also looks like those modern jetpacks that you see on like YouTube videos or on Facebook and whatnot. So it's very similar to those, but upgraded.
And she also built her own arc reactor.
Exactly. Yes.
Incredibly. And of course, in Black Panther fashion, we get a car chase scene.
Yeah.
Which is it's a great scene. It leads to Okoye and Shiri and Riri on a bridge. Okoye fights Atuma. She actually takes out like 3 other of the Mer people with lethal blows. and then they get up and walk away. Which
her mind's just blown at that point.
Yeah, somebody did point out, why did they get up and walk away? But in the later fight, they were literally being killed. But we don't know that because they're getting knocked. That fight scene's over the water. They're getting knocked in the water. They could be just recovering and then getting back in the fight. Because at the end of that, right before that fight is over, there's like 1,000 to 1 numbers. Like there's so many of the Mer people versus Wakandans that are left. So maybe they are recovering, but they're super strong. They're obviously durable and possibly not invulnerable because they do get cut and they get stabbed, but they're able to heal incredibly quickly. But Shuri decides that by the way, the other 2 main Mer people we get in this from Talokan are Namora's cousin, and Atuma. And Atuma is actually a villain of Namora's, but he has sometimes worked with him it's kind of like, think like Starscream and Megatron kind of thing, or think like Ocean Master and Aquaman. Whereas sometimes Ocean Master will stick around and work with Aquaman because he's still trying to get the throne. Atuma's doing the same thing. He'll sometimes all right, I'll, you're my king, blah, blah, blah. But reality is I'm going to usurp you. So I thought it was interesting, but this Atuma is very much like, you are my, and they don't look at Namor as a king. They look at him as the serpent god.
Yeah.
Which I thought was also fascinating.
I'm not even going to try to pronounce.
No, that name is way too hard.
I know there's Khan at the end of it, but
yeah, it's Katlakan or something like that, or Katlakan,
yes.
Katlakan, something like that. It's the serpent god of the Mayan people, and it's because he is a mutant, and we find this out because Shuri's like, hey, look, I'll go with you. Take me to Namor. No need to kill us. Do not kill her, because they're trying to kill Riri because she created that thing and she could do it again. And it's brought the surface world to their people because that other meteorite, the other vibranium meteorite, landed in the ocean, and that's what gave them, their people, their powers and their ability to live underwater. So they go down, and Namor decides to open up to Shuri and explains that he was born in 1571. And his people were starting to get smallpox and whatnot from the Spaniard colonizers. They found their version of the blue shape of the heart-shaped herb in this kind of like water lily aloe plant. They all drank from it thinking it would heal them. It led to them all becoming mer people, but his mother being pregnant with him, when he was born underwater, he had wings and ears that pointed to the sky. He was a mutant. And now he's a mutant that's obviously, it said it very much slowed his aging, made him nearly invulnerable, super strong. And it's been talked about that his strength when in the water or when wet rivals the Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
And then even on land, not near water, it still rivals Thor.
Yeah.
And we see that somewhat in the film. But, that makes him, this is like 2025 at this point in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so that makes him 500 years old almost. He's 450 years old. So this is another reason that his people see him as a god, but he's also the only one who can walk on the surface world and breathe regular air. The rest of them need water mask.
Yeah, it's a little mask that fits over their nose and their mouth, and it has water in it.
It also has shoulder ones because their gills are actually right here.
Yeah, they're at the base.
So they have gills and nostrils, but their nostrils still need to breathe in water. So they have a mask here, and then they have the shoulder ones keep water going into their gills. Another thing I found fascinating, and I think this is a great choice. In the water, they're not blue.
Yeah.
And it has to do with the deoxygenation of being out of the water, that their skin turns blue when they get out of the water. They also, something that I didn't mention before, they have a siren song. They have a siren song. It's like a sonic hypnosis thing that I thought was And that leads into the mer people, like, of all lore,
Yeah.
all fairy tales and mythologies that mention mer people talk about sirens and their ability to pull you in with a song, and they actually have that. I thought that was fascinating to add that little detail. And then they have these like water grenades, which I'm like, how does a water? It's like a water balloon, but there is like, I don't know how they do it, but the amount of pressure in them obviously is enough to actually like be an actual explosion just with water instead of flame.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead
Which
of
by the-
shrapnel, you're getting bombarded by like a tiny tidal wave.
But what's also great is like, again, you don't have, there was really almost no explosions in this whole movie because Wakandan technology runs off vibranium. It's not fossil fuels. It's not oil or gas. So the engine isn't a combustion engine. So even though they're getting sliced up and cut up and their ships are being destroyed, there's no real explosion. The mer people have everything water based, or like, I love the whales and everything. I thought that was always cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was a great little touch too, is that there was no actual like, wasn't any major until like the car chase scene where we again had a combustible engine. But
yeah, I think that was just a brilliant foresight for the production, because they know that vibranium isn't combustible. It has energy, but it's not explodable.
yeah, and I also think it actually added kind of to the somber feel of the film, because instead of these ships exploding and making the scene like, oh my god, intense, it was more like it's just going down. And it's just like everything's going, and there was no like explosive sound. There was no big flames. It's like it was just intense in a more.
It was actually really
emotional
refreshing.
It's also refreshing to not be like overdone with a bunch of explosions.
Yeah, I think
So I
Michael
agree- I
Bay
agree.
did enough explosions in the early 2000s.
Yeah, he still does.
Oh my god!
But so basically, it gets to the point where, of course, Namora goes into Wakanda, and so Lupita Nyong'o's character, which I can't remember the character's name for some reason, it escapes me. He's been living in Haiti for years now, ever since the Infinity War, and he wasn't at the funeral, which was a little weird. But Ramona goes down to see her because Shiri is supposedly, kidnapped, even though Shiri actually agreed. Okoye was knocked out at the time, which, by the way, again, another amazing speech from Angela Bassett.
Mm-hmm.
He strips Okoye of her place in the Dora Milaje and as a general because she didn't protect her daughter, and now her entire family's gone. So she goes down to see Lupita's character, and it's like, look, I know that you're out, but I need you. You're the only person that can sneak in and find him. And she does. She gets down there. But in the process, end up having to shoot two of the Silicon people to get them out, Riri and Shiri. And that's basically like Namor's like, nope, we're going to war.
Her character's name is shoot, I just had it. Nakii Nkoye.
Okoye, okay.
Yep.
So they get out, and that, of course, that triggers Namor to go after them, and that's when we have the big battle at Wakanda, where we see that Wakanda is vastly underprepared for something like this. They've never seen anything like it, and they're not ready for it. And I thought one of the most interesting things in that scene was how the Wakanda very slowly started to flood.
Yes. Oh, that was a very subtle scene. I mean, when Okoye and Nakia were talking in Wakanda about her not being there, and I didn't notice it at first, and then I heard a little water, and I looked over to the side at Nkoye, and I was like, "Oh shit, there's water coming in," and nobody's noticing that.
Yeah, I remember watching that scene, and they're talking, and they get up and walk out because they hear something, and there's water, kind of like a 10-foot puddle. But I thought that for some reason I thought that had been there.
Yeah, I was like, right before
but
they
it
walked
wasn't.
out.
It hadn't been there.
No, it was so subtle, and you would not to think to look at it. But while they're talking, I just barely heard in the theater a little water rippling, and I looked over to the left. I was like, "Where's that water coming from? And why is it coming fast?"
Yeah.
I mean, it's coming in quick, but it's not like rushing. But it's like when you start to pour a pitcher of water on a floor and it starts going out.
Yeah.
It's very slowly, and then all of a sudden, boom, big water explosion. And when I say explosion, I'm not meaning fire. I mean just water pouring
Just
out
bursting.
of the wall.
Yeah, bursting through the wall. Yeah. I thought that was again.
Lost your audio again.
Fun times. Fun times. Sorry about this, guys. Gotta love Zoom is doing this. I think Jason had the right idea about the Discord. We'll have to look into that this week. All right, Kel's coming back in. Give it time to catch up.
Mic check.
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that battle is
But
great.
yeah.
It's absolutely phenomenal. M'Baku gets put on his ass. I thought he was dead for a minute.
Oh yeah,
Like,
the way they slow mo that punch and Namor breaking N'Baku's armor, I was like, oh, he did.
Yeah, I thought he was dead. I was like, oh no, but he wasn't. Thank God.
And of course, gotta give it up for the actor who plays N'Baku in this. He is phenomenal once again. And
Winston
he is
Duke.
Winston
Love that
Duke,
dude.
yes. It's phenomenal, and he just started acting like fairly recently when he did the first Black Panther.
Yeah, that was only like it's his first major role as far as I know.
Yeah.
He'd only done other things. So good.
But N'Baku is also a very great character in the movie in general.
Yeah, and we're gonna get to him a little bit later because something major kind of happens, and this is what I want to talk about toward the end. And I'm kind of rushing through this, just because I don't want this episode to end up being like 3 hours long, like the movie was.
We could easily make it that long.
Yeah, and we may talk about this more next week, and may go deeper into it. We'll see, but this is where Namor goes after Riri and Queen Ramonda, and of course Queen Ramonda saves Riri, but in the process drowns herself. They couldn't save her. So now Shuri again has lost everyone and becomes angry. In the process, though, she realizes because Namor gave her a gift, and it was a bracelet that his mother had. Bracelet that was weaved from the same fibers of the plant that gave them all their abilities. Shuri decides to use that to try to maybe look into the blue heart-shaped herb again. Of course, it works. So she prints one, it glows, she takes it. And, of course, when you take the herb, you visit the ancestral plane. Unless your mind is conflicted. We saw when Killmonger took the herb, he visited the apartment he grew up in where his dad was. And where his dad died. In this, Shuri ends up in the throne room, surrounded by flames, and none other than Killmonger is there, the returning Michael B. Jordan.
Oh, I could not believe that happened.
That had been rumored for a long time, but it was not like this.
Yeah.
And the fact that Marvel was able to keep this under wraps was pretty damn cool. But basically, he's like, is this a construct of her mind, like Shuri says, or is this something that did she pick him, for the ancestral plane, et cetera, et cetera? They have a wonderful conversation.
It really goes back to at the beginning of the film when Shuri's talking to her mother, and Ramonda is talking about going out and discovering this ritual about burning her funeral robes and stuff. And she said, I really felt like T'Challa was with me. I could feel his hand on my shoulder. He's like, that wasn't, and Shuri's just like, that wasn't him. That was just a construct that you can create in your mind for comfort. I was like, well, when you make a construct of your brother, does it bring you comfort or does it bring you torment?
Yeah.
And I thought that line, oh my God, anybody who suffered a great loss has really, I felt that because I went through that in my own personal life.
Yeah.
And that line is so on the spot, correct.
Absolutely.
Because
And
until you learn to grieve properly and let go of your grief, the thought of someone you lost can consume you to where you just are just angry, like Shuri is in this movie and everything.
And
So
Shuri being angry, it led to her seeing Killmonger instead of
Yes.
her brother or her mother. And he basically said, look, you're just like me. And you want what I wanted. He's like, no, I'm not like you. He's like, oh, look, are you going to be noble like your brother who couldn't do the job, letting the man who killed your father live? Or are you going to be like me and be strong and do what's necessary? But it's not being strong. It's about being, taking the dark route. It was a dark side versus, light side kind of situation. And Shuri comes back. She's, now got the powers of the Black Panther. She makes her own suit, which, by the way, does have some Killmonger influence in the design because she adds the gold trim that he had, but still makes it her own. But she very much is like, we're taking the battle to Namor and his people. We're going to kill him. And M'Baku's now like, because everybody hitting Wakanda has evacuated to the mountain areas of the Jabara people. And he's just like, I know I first said I wanted Namor dead, but I'm thinking now the man is seen as a god, not a king.
Yeah.
He's a god. If we kill him, it's only going to inflame his people more to come after us. And we are not prepared to take them on.
I was really surprised about that shift with him, but I think it was the best.
Yeah, it made sense too, because he's like, I'm
did.
about Wakanda. And so, but Shuri's like, no, we're going to kill him. She also develops a plan to basically put him in an evaporator because they realize that water is what gives him strength. So they take the battle to them. They go out to the ocean. They have a battle. Riri makes a full Ironheart suit, her Mark II. It was kind of chunky and Gundam-esque, but very smooth.
Yeah.
But I still appreciated it. And I also feel like, again, we're going to see, maybe, and it's also made of vibranium, which I thought was cool, but like, it's obviously it's a Mark II. Like we'll see in her series, we'll get a more maybe streamlined version of it coming. She also, at the end of the film, leaves it behind. Like they won't let her take it, and she's completely understands. But we get the battle. It's going Wakanda's way at first. And then, of course, they get overrun. They trap Namor in the ship with the evaporator, but he does finally break free. They're on a desert. Shuri and him are fighting. He's still kicking her ass, but she's holding her own until she gets impaled.
Yeah.
But she ripped off one of his wings, which that was brutal. I was like, oh shit. Shuri, but then has that moment that she was meant to have in the beginning, and she's visited by Queen Ramonda. And once again, Angela Bassett, just amazing. And basically tells us, like, are you going to be like your cousin or like your brother? Or are you going to be the better of them all?
Yeah, show him who you are.
Yeah.
Is the exact line. And she decides to not kill him.
So she makes him yield after like that amazing scene where she breaks off the spear and pulls herself off. The nano suit heals itself, but she's obviously still bleeding inside. But they continue to fight. She makes him yield, and right before the Wakandans are wiped out, Namor shows up and says it's time for us to go. And
they end up making a deal saying that we'll protect Telecon
and your secret,
but you will not fight against us.
And later on in the film, like towards the end, after that, Namora is like, I look up to you, and yet you yielded? Like, what are you doing? And he goes, no. Because now they're on our side. When the world comes for their vibranium, and it will, we're going to be there as allies, and they're going to help us destroy the world.
Yeah, and that just shows what a brilliant tactician that Namor is.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where he's still struggling. Is he good? Is he an evil conqueror? I mean, he's still walking that tightrope.
And the thing is, he's not wanting to destroy the world to conquer it. He's wanting to destroy these people because he sees them as evil, and as colonizers and enslavers and these people who want to make the world burn themselves. And he's just trying to protect his people. And he feels like with Wakanda on his side, it's the only way that can be done. So,
and going back to why he sees the world is that when his mother died, her last wish was to be buried on land where she was born. No more does that. He brings her body back to and he's still about a 9-year-old child, you would say, in that scene?
Probably 12.
Maybe ish. Between adolescent and preteen.
Yeah.
But he has his people with him. And when he goes back to the land, the colonizers have grown sugarcane. He's enslaved the native people there. And they really attack him. But Namor and his followers end up slaughtering all the colonizers.
Yeah.
Setting the plantation on fire, burying his mother and leaving. So that gives great motive for why he does not want anything to do with the surface world. And that's why I think this changing the ethnicity of Namor was brilliant by Marvel. Yes, you get to include other cultures and other
diversity.
Thank you. But also you get to tell a very unique story from someone that we've never really seen before in big Marvel movies or any big movie like this.
It also justifies his stance.
Exactly.
Because that's all he knows is that the surface world is full of people trying to take over and harm his people and etc. So of course he would feel the way he feels.
Yeah. And like I was saying at the beginning of the cast, it gets him away from just being get off my lawn, old man, to I don't agree with what you're doing, but I understand why you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And so again, they come to some understanding and everything, and of course Shuri's well, I've got one more thing I got to do, and that's of course the trial. When Prince T'Challa became king, there was the scene on that mountain cliff in that little waterfall area.
Yeah.
Anybody wants to go for the throne, they got to do that, the tradition. But she decides to not show up, and M'Baku shows up instead, and it kind of leans to the fact that he's going to end up being king of Wakanda. And I think it's because Shuri's going to walk away because she doesn't want the Black Panther mantle or the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And she's not ready for it yet. So that to me, and again, this is all implied. We don't know for sure. She may come back and she may stay Black Panther for a while, but we could get multiple Black Panthers in that as King of Wakanda, and especially if Shuri's going to be off Wakandan land for a while, he has to take a heart shaper and become the protector as well. So we could get M'Baku as a version of Black Panther, or even his character, which what is it? Silverback is who he was in the comics.
I believe. I'm not 100% on that.
Get it up real quick. Manape,
yeah.
But we could get a version so his Black Panther suit would look more along the lines of his people. And it could also, we could have multiple Black Panthers from here on out. But Shuri decides to go to Haiti and do the ritual of burning the robes and everything and kind of moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And again, a very emotional scene. And that's where we get the highlight of Chadwick Boseman and everything he had done. But then there's a mid-credit scene right after that moment. So we get the flashy style credits with a beautiful Rihanna song and Nkoye brings out her son. As it turns out, this is also T'Challa's son.
Yeah.
And he is Prince T'Challa, son of King T'Challa. So they're also setting up that down the line, we'll have a T'Challa again. But they've given us like a 5 to 10 year period before the recasting has to be done.
Yeah.
Before, so we'll have T'Challa will return in the MCU with a new actor as T'Challa, but it'll be his son, T'Challa Jr., for lack of a better term.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I was like,
but still, what I did not see that coming one bit. I just thought Nkoye just had to process things from, because T'Challa was snapped.
Yeah.
So, there really wasn't a reason for her to stay in Wakanda.
Yeah.
With him being gone. And then once he came back, he probably reunited with her, introduced T'Challa to their son, T'Challa. And they both agreed that he doesn't need to be in Wakanda right now. Teach him about Wakanda, but don't bring him there. Not yet. Because they didn't want the pressure of, being king, carrying the throne, and all that. That's too much to be thrust upon this small child with no real guidance from his father. So I thought that was really just,
Yeah, I thought that was really good. One of the things we didn't talk about was I talked about earlier how Okoye had been stripped of her title.
Mm-hmm.
But throughout the movie, we see that Shuri had been making her a suit of armor to help enhance her strength and kind of, add technology to Dora Milaje.
Yeah.
She and I can't remember the other one's name, the one that uses the daggers. They take up the armor. That's the Midnight Angels. Now, the Midnight Angels are actually an elite group of assassins within the Dora Milaje. And the suit, while I may not have truly cared for the look, it is straight out of the comics.
Yeah.
That is exactly how they look in the comics. So I thought that was kind of cool too, like to see that added in. That means that, we know Okoye is also going to get her own series, so we could see some kind of advancement there. Or, it's going to be, her life now that she's not the general. Or does she get reinstated as the Dora Milaje general? Or does she decide not to take it, and just be part of this, create this kind of elite group, the Midnight Angels? So that was also an interesting thing to talk on. Like I said, for me, the only issues with this film, there was some pacing issues. A lot of it mainly around Everett Ross and the fact that kind of went on a little bit too long in the Contessa stuff, which I appreciate adding the Contessa in because it does, again, because so many people are like, oh, look, they finally connected everything. I think, no, it's been connected the whole time. Shut up. But it does, put a firm stamp on the face for connection of Contessa throughout. The one other thing, when Shuri is down with Namor, and Namor takes her all the way down to his people's land, to Talokan, and shows her their world, I just didn't like the song choice. I think a lyrical song, which granted I couldn't understand it was in a different language, and I'm sure it had a poignant meaning, but it just felt like it should have been like a slow, epic, orchestral style song for that moment.
Yeah, similar to what we got when Wakanda was revealed.
Yeah, exactly.
Black Panther mode.
And also, somebody else mentioned this, and I thought maybe it was just my theater. So, and I'm gonna go back and watch. I'm gonna go watch it actually at a different theater later on. I'm gonna go to Ocala's got a big IMAX. I'm gonna go see it on IMAX. I think it'd be amazing on IMAX. But I thought, that's a little dark. Like the scene where Namor first premiered was a little dark, and then the stuff in the water was a little dark. And I'm like, well, I mean, maybe it's my theater, and also it is water. But I've seen a lot of complaints like maybe that was a little bit too dark. Okay, but I did think it was still really cool to see all that, and that was cool. So again, those are my only two issues with the film. All in all, phenomenal film, one of the best Marvel's ever done. Definitely the most somber, incredibly emotional film. But I highly recommend if you haven't already seen it. First of all, why'd you sit through all this and get spoilers? But even so, go see it. It's so good. Yes. I'm gonna go see it again. I can't wait for the Marvel Assembled episode on the behind the scenes about it because I know how emotional that's going to be. But I really would like to see how they did go through that. So I'm looking forward to seeing it again, seeing more about it, and seeing what the future holds. Because again, at the very end of the credits, Black Panther will return.
Yeah.
But which one? Do we get multiples?
I mean, just got to stay tuned and watch.
That'll be interesting. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap it up for our review of Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Again, we both thoroughly enjoyed this film. It is very, very good. We look forward to it. As far as what's going on next week, I honestly have no idea. We'll find something to talk about because we always do. But if you're on Twitch, please hit that follow button. If you're feeling generous, please subscribe. If you have Amazon Prime, use your Amazon Prime subscription and make Jeffrey Bezos pay for it. If you're on YouTube, please hit that follow button. Please hit that like button. And please hit the notification bell so every time we go live. If you're on Facebook, please hit that thumbs up, hit that follow button, and share it with your friends. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been SuperBeard. This is Kel McCosplay. As the wonderful Kevin Pereira says, kisses, hugs, and belly rubs. Thank you from the TGN podcast, and we will see you guys next week.